Alright, so the most overlooked part of competitive cubing is controlling your nerves. If that's all you came here for, you can leave now. I'm just going to be talking about that for the rest of this video and why I think it's so important. So something I've noticed recently is that people tend to overlook nerves as something that they have to practice when it comes to cubing. People generally just practice solving really fast in low pressure environments, like at home at their desk or something like that, and then they get mad at themselves when they don't get the official results they were hoping for when it comes to an actual competition. A lot of times they blame it on being nervous, but that's not something you should be blaming, that's something you should be working to fix. Nerves are kind of treated like an external factor, like something that you had no control over, but they totally should be something you can control, and they are something you can control. So that's something that I'm going to be talking about in this video. So we're going to start off with an example. Let's say somebody averages 12 at home on 3x3, and they go to a competition and they get a 15 average, and they're really mad because they just got a bunch of 15s and they know they average way better than that. Personally, I would like to argue that they actually do average 15, because if they're getting consistent 15s when they actually go compete under that pressure, then that's what they average, in my opinion. Sure, they definitely have a lot of skill and they put a lot of time into practicing to get sub 15, to that 12-second average, but if they can't do it in competition, they're really not proving that they're actually averaging 12. It looks like they average 15 to anybody who just looks at their WCA profile. The reason I'm bringing this all up is because if you followed me as a competitive cuber recently, you'll notice that I've had some decent success with pyraminx. So at nationals this year, I did get first place in pyraminx, and I also recently got a 232 average, which puts me at 6th in the world. But something I've noticed is that I am not by any means the 6th best pyraminx solver in the world. I'm in this group chat on Facebook Messenger with a whole bunch of really good pyraminx solvers, and most of them are way better than me when it comes to at-home practice, but quite a few of them don't have the official results to back it up, and a lot of that comes down to nerves, especially for such a short event like pyraminx. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is practice. So a lot of times when people ask how they can get faster, they're just told practice, right? And that's the basic information that you give to everybody who asks how to get faster. And then a lot of times people like to go more in depth, because the truth is there's so much more than just doing a bunch of solves, right? You're doing a bunch of solves, but you also want to learn some new things, and you also want to work on the things you're not so good at. So that's where more like, skilled practice comes in, I guess, like more specific practice, focusing on the things that you're bad at and working on those, instead of just doing a bunch of solves and hoping it fixes itself. And that's great advice, but I would say you need to go farther than that. I would say you need to go completely outside the realm of actually sitting at your desk and solving or learning or anything like that. I'd say a big thing you need to do is learn how to control your nerves in situations outside of competitions. So clearly some people aren't going to need to put as much effort into controlling their nerves as other people are. Some people are really good at it and they don't need to do that at all, so their practice might be 100% just cubing, right? Other people might be really good at cubing naturally, but they just can't get the results to back it up. So in cases like those, I think they should be spending a decent amount of their time practicing controlling nerves. Alright, so at this point I think I've proven enough that you need to control your nerves when you're competing officially. That's something that's just going to have to happen. So now the question is, how do you do that? So I'm going to make this personal for a second. So I've never mentioned this on my channel before, but when I was growing up around 5th, 6th grade, that sort of time in my life, I had to deal with a lot of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and also just general anxiety. So I basically had a lot of sort of stress in my life that I didn't really know how to deal with. So I'm not trying to make this so you're like pitying me or anything, because I really am super lucky to have gotten through this. A lot of people carry stuff like this for their entire lives, and that's really unfortunate. Fortunately, I was able to get through most of these difficulties that I had when I was younger. And a lot of that just comes down to learning how to deal with my nerves and learning how to just control myself when I'm nervous and in those situations. It's not so much that I get nervous less, it's just that I'm not nervous about being nervous anymore. Hey, it's me from the future. Just wanted to add something I forgot to say while I was recording this. Basically, the reason I'm bringing this all up is to point out how I worked on eliminating nerves in cubing by working on eliminating them through life. It is great to practice controlling your nerves in cubing by making yourself solve in really stressful settings, like in public with a lot of people watching or something like that, but a lot of people do overlook the fact that they can take advantage of the actual times in life when they're stressed out. Everyone panics sometimes, even if it's not a diagnosable disorder, and I think times of extreme stress or panic are really good opportunities to find out ways to calm yourself down. Every time you find yourself stressed out, take it as an opportunity to learn what works for you to reduce that stress. I personally had a lot of chances to figure out what works for me, and a great side effect of that is that it transfers over to cubing competitions pretty well. So this is kind of what I mean by practicing controlling your nerves, just putting yourself in stressful situations or taking advantage of the ones that already exist to really try to learn what works for you to control your nerves. Basically, what I hope to do in this video is give you enough ideas for how to control your nerves that hopefully one of them or a combination of them will work for you. So first I'm going to go through some common advice and say why it may not be the most comprehensive or just the best advice to give to anybody. So the first thing people usually say is don't care about your results, don't care about the average, things like that. And that's great advice. If you can get to the point where you really don't care about your results and you can just do whatever you want and you're not going to be disappointed, that's great. That's perfect. Because at that point you really don't care. That's kind of an ideal situation, but for the average person, the average speedcuber who's really competitive, you are going to care about your results, and it's just not realistic to say don't care about them, because you are going to care. I've been through this before. I know what it's like when it's the final round of your main event and you're super stressed out and you're trying to tell yourself not to care about your results, but you really do care. It's not an easy thing to get through. Another piece of advice that people generally give that's also really not that great is take a deep breath, or take a few deep breaths. So this can work, and it's definitely helpful for some people, so definitely try it out if you haven't. But at the same time, I think it's not really the best advice to give to people, because a lot of times when people take deep breaths, they're just sort of breathing and they're not actually thinking about calming themselves down. It's just that they know they're supposed to take a deep breath, so they do that and then hope it'll all be better. I just took a deep breath right now and it felt pretty calming, but I don't think that would be the only thing I could do to make my pyramid solves better officially. I think you kind of need more than that. If you can do it with just deep breathing, more power to you, but I think for the average person, you're probably going to need a little more. So now I'm going to talk about what I personally do to control my nerves in stressful competition situations. So I've gone through a lot of different things before that I've tried to do, like taking deep breaths and telling myself it doesn't matter, things like that, but they never really worked all that well because I was still always like, sort of hyper and shaking a little bit, kind of stressed out when I would go to compete. So personally, what I do nowadays is I'll always bring some headphones to a competition. I have them around my neck before the round starts. And on my phone, I have Fred Gred's Wind Waker Unplugged remix playing just on loop. So this is a Legend of Zelda remix. It's just super relaxing for me. It really always puts me in like a relaxed state and I'm able to calm down completely. So I always have that playing on loop, full blast in my headphones. Just turn the volume all the way up and just have that going in my ears as I'm just like waiting to start the round. Besides listening to calming music, I also make a point to basically completely ignore my surroundings and just be in a complete state of just like existence, but not actually thinking about existence. So like at Nats Finals this year, I was sitting next to Drew Brads on one side and Chris Shanathwani on the other side, both extremely talented pyramid solvers. People were watching our tables during pyramid finals, and I knew that. I was very stressed out about that going into finals because I knew people were going to be watching that sort of area. And it can be tempting to look at the crowd and see all those people watching you and, because it feels really cool, right? It's a great feeling. But at the same time, if they're watching you and you're getting bad times, that doesn't feel good. So I really did make a point to not look at the crowd at all and not look at the people to my left and right. Basically, the only interaction I had when doing pyramid finals was when I told my judge that I was ready. So between solves, I basically would put my headphones back on, I would close my eyes, or I would stare down at the stack mat, and I would just sort of tap to the beat of Wind Waker or something like that, just focus completely on this music and getting myself in the calmest state possible. And the insane thing was, there were actually quite a few times during pyramid finals where I felt completely calm. Like, I knew there were things to be nervous about, but I still felt completely calm and completely collected, and that was actually an insane feeling. And for short events like Pyraminx, 2x2 Scube, or even just in any big finals, I think a big reason it's important to not look at your surroundings or like to completely ignore everything going on around you is because, then you'll sort of hear the crowd cheering for certain people and you'll sort of start calculating in your head. The most dangerous thing I've noticed, for me at least, when it comes to competitive cubing is as soon as I do like maybe 3 solves and they're kind of decent, I start calculating, what do I need to get a PB? What do I need to podium? Things like that. And those thoughts are really dangerous when it's such a short event or, when you have such high stress levels, because then, as soon as you start calculating that, you're going to start getting super nervous and you're not going to be able to get the times you need. So basically for me during Pyraminx finals, when I had my eyes closed or just staring down and I had Wind Waker playing, I heard some crowd noises, I heard some cheering on and off, but I basically completely ignored it. I wouldn't let myself think about that. Instead, I would just completely focus on the music and just focus on calming myself down, and it really did work. This actually happened again at my last competition where I got my 232 PR Pyraminx average. So during that round, Livia Kleiner actually got her PR average as well. She got a 245, I believe. And so she finished her average before I finished mine. I still had like a solve or two left. So I heard her like really excited and everybody was going over there really excited for her. And I wanted to be excited and I kind of felt like a bad friend not being excited. But at the same time, I knew that I had to finish my Pyraminx average because I knew I had a decent chance at getting a PR as well. And basically I didn't want to let myself get distracted by other people's results, because as soon as you see someone else's results, you're going to be like, oh, am I going to beat them? What do I need to beat them? Things like that. And like I said, those thoughts are completely like really dangerous to have. So basically I saw the crowd going over there. I actually moved away from that direction. I had my headphones on. I was just staring at the floor, sort of tapping to the beat, just focusing on that, and I got through it. I didn't find out what her average was until the end of the round, and it was a good average, so congrats to her. But that's sort of a big part of it, honestly, just being able to completely ignore whatever's going on around you, so your mind doesn't get into states like that where it just starts calculating. But at the same time, I would not say that this recent New York competition came even close to the amount of stress I had going into Nats finals and Pyraminx this year. And besides the fact that, it's a local competition versus a national competition, I think the biggest reason that I haven't been getting nervous as much recently is because I've done it before, and I've proven to myself that I can do it. So what I'm trying to say is the first battle is the hardest one. It's going to take a long time for you to get a result you're happy with, or a podium you really wanted for a really long time, or something like that. But once you do it, it's all uphill from there. Because once you know you can handle your nerves in that sort of situation once, you know you can do it in the future. So before I wrap up this video, I do want to talk about what some other people do to control their nerves as well, so maybe you can get some ideas for yourself. So DGCuber recently had his Square One North American record average, and during that, he was listening to music as well, just like I do. He was listening to Bobby McFerrin, Don't Worry, Be Happy. Maybe that'll help you, I'm not sure, but he basically had a super positive attitude going into it. He knew he worked for it, he knew he was capable of doing it, and he was just super positive going in. And that's like a really good mindset to have, just being happy with whatever happens. And that's sort of what Derpy did to get his North American record. I also asked a bunch of people in the Pyraminxers group chat I mentioned earlier what they do to control their nerves. Dominic Heising said he sits down and says he's ready immediately. He tells his judge, I'm ready, and then he just goes. I think that's really good advice as well. It might not work for everybody, but it definitely works for some people. The biggest advice I would give to you guys is as soon as you feel calm, say you're ready before you have a chance to not be ready. Some people definitely need more time than others to calm down, so it might take you a minute to reach that state of complete calmness. You might just want to sit down and do it right away. But the biggest thing is, as soon as you say you're ready, just be confident and go for it. Another piece of advice from Stephen Wintringham, a Pyraminxer, said that he just sort of wipes his hands on a paper towel and then he just goes. He doesn't really let nerves affect him that much. And so that's, a perfect example of how not everybody needs to work the same amount on controlling nerves. Like for me, it was a really big battle. For other people, it's like, it comes more naturally. So you just need to find that balance for you. And Chris Athwani said that basically in the averages he gets that he's proud of, he kind of goes in with that mindset of not caring about his results. And that definitely is a good mindset to have if you are capable of doing that. Like I said earlier, that is really hard to do, so don't blame yourself if you can't, but if you can, more power to you. And of course, the biggest thing when it all comes down to it is just experience competing. My first couple competitions, I was super nervous, even though I wasn't really good at 3x3 or whatever events I was doing. I was just super nervous to be competing at all. But the more you compete, the more experience you get, and the less nerve-wracking it is. So basically just keep competing because it's only going to get better as you keep doing it. All right, so a couple final points before I wrap up this video. So I don't recommend you do exactly what I do just because I do it and it works for me. Everybody's going to have something that works differently for them, so try to experiment with a lot of things and see what works best for you. If my method worked, that's totally great, but if it doesn't, don't be discouraged. There's definitely something that will help you control your nerves better. Also keep in mind that this is sort of a continuous thing. I'm not claiming to be an expert on this at all. It's definitely something I'm still working on perfecting. I still do get nervous officially, and some of my bad results definitely come down to nerves. So it's still something I'm working on, and it's still something I think everybody should be working on continuously. So, if you do have a couple fail averages in there, even once you feel like you've been able to control your nerves, don't let that get to you. I'm sure I'm going to have some bad averages in the future, and I'm not going to let that get to me because I know I've been able to fix that in the past, so I should definitely be able to do it in the future. And yeah, the biggest thing, don't be set back from failures. They happen to absolutely everybody in the cubing community and elsewhere. So to wrap up this video, I'm going to show you guys a solve from before I started really trying to control my nerves and from after I started controlling my nerves. And you'll see the difference, you'll see why it works, and you'll see why it's so important.